I thought Alonso handled himself pretty well. I wouldn't say he seemed excited or happy, but I think he seems satisfied for the time being, getting paid that $30 million for the first year, and it was going to be the highest for a first baseman in the sport. And my favorite takeaway from it was the fact that he finally acknowledged that his last two seasons weren't good. Remember last year, he was talking about, I'm an all-star and this and that, and I thought he should have said, you know what, Lindor was an all-star, or Nimmo deserved to be an all-star, and Pete was, to me, blindly just building himself up, saying he deserved to be an all-star in a year, which he didn't. But he had a little more self-awareness than normal, and I do think he's on a mission to prove himself. Now we just actually got to go out there and have a vintage, big-time Pete Alonso season.
I think Pete's going to have a good year, and you know how I feel about Pete. I'm not the biggest fan from a baseball perspective. I think he's a good guy. I think he's a good home run hitter, really good, but I think there's a lot of things wrong with his game. But he sounded free yesterday. He sounded loose. He sounded relieved of burden. Now, and we'll get into this in a little bit, there's other burdens that might be coming on the radar soon, maybe like Vlad Guerrero coming to take his position. We'll get to that in a minute. And also, if he doesn't have a big year, then he's not going to be able to opt out. There's still things that he's got to juggle. Like, it's not completely free, but I think the key, Sal, no matter what you do for a living, no matter what the weakness might be, being honest and acknowledging weaknesses generally is the first step to getting better at it. Right. Honestly, whether it's something with your marriage, whether it's something with a coworker, whether it's something with your children, whatever. I mean, really applies to every facet of life. If you don't know, well, let me take that. Even people who know that they need to work on things, if they can't say it out loud and let those words reverberate off the walls for everybody to hear them, I think the path to cleaning things up becomes much more complicated. So I think Pete's ready to roll this year. I really do.
It was one of my big issues with him a year ago when, I'd rather have heard from Pete last year saying, I don't deserve to be an all-star this year. I'm going to go and represent the Mets and be happy to do so, but Francisco Lindor should go over me. He didn't do that. So that's why I think that, to your point, that is a big step that we saw from him yesterday, some self-awareness and acknowledge, hey, how could you not? If you're not humbled or be made aware of the reality of your situation after the offseason that he just went through, then there's no hope. Now, so it's good what he said. Now he's got to go out there and actually do it. So there's another part of me that thinks, okay, well, he's coming off of 2 bad years. I believed last year he was going to have a good year, betting on himself, final year of the walk year, whatever, final year of his contract, coming off a down year, bounce back in a big way, and he didn't do that. So now it's another year older, 2 bad years in a row. So now not only did he have to acknowledge that he hasn't been as good, which he did, he's actually going to go out there and produce. Like, we could say he's going to have a big year. Yeah. I said it last year, it didn't work. You say it this year, who knows? Oh, he's in a better lineup. Well, we're going to find out. Pete Alonso's going to be under a lot of pressure this year. He's not playing just for this season, obviously. He doesn't have financial security long-term or a home for the next 5-6 years. He said he wants to be here. The Mets want him to have a good year, just like we did last year. So now is he actually going to go out there and do it? I still have my doubts about Alonso. I think he's in a good place mentally, which is encouraging, but I still have my doubts that he's actually going to go out there and perform.
I really was excited to hear him talk yesterday, and I had to go out to St. John's to do something, so I had a chance to be in the car for a while going across Midtown, and even though traffic was a little bit lighter because of the holiday. So I listened to Evan and Tiki, as I generally would anyway, and they had a chance to play the entire thing. And I heard somebody who's free for now. He even went so deep as, and you and I have criticized this, like, we can't stand the way he throws the baseball.
Right.
Like, when he's trying to turn a 3-6-3 double or play at the plate, it's like it's not a loose. It's just an ugly throw. And he even talked about that. He's like, listen, I went back, I looked at my mistakes, I looked at what I think I need to get better at, and he talked specifically about defense. So, this is a man who, let's put ourselves in Pete's shoes. I know it's easy for, and by the way, I think what we've done has been very fair and very accurate with Pete Alonso. I think you and I have been on that accurate train for really as much as anybody from day one. Never been personal. It's been very, let's lift up the curtain. Who is this guy as a player, and should he get the contract he desires? We're very honest about that. And it's not about us being right. We happen to be right with this. But the other thing, too, when I look at Pete, I do think if I'm him, I'm sitting there saying, all right, yeah, I can acknowledge I had 80-something ribbies last year. The home runs went down. I can acknowledge I'm not Keith Hernandez with the leather. I can acknowledge, I'm not going to hit 310. I'm never going to be that hitter. But I'm still really, really good. And I'm one of the best players the Mets have ever had as a position player. And I'm beloved by this fan base. So I say all this. Many of us know this. But I do think it's important at least once in a while, which we've tried to do, put ourselves in his shoes. Nobody wanted you.
Right.
Like, you're 30 years old. You play a position that's kind of, certainly decaying a bit in terms of importance and length and contract and all that stuff. You just gave Juan Soto $1 gazillion and every concession, whether it's suites and everything for his family, and you're trying to just carve out a little, 3, 4, 5-year deal, which he couldn't get. So I don't think that he really thought he was an all-star last year. I just think he couldn't say it. Because I think when you say it, you're putting it out there, and in his mind, which I also get, complicates the negotiations. Well, people really start jumping. I'm not doing that well. I think that he handled it wrong, but I think right now, Pete is really in a good space and ready to go.
Yeah, and the thing that I'm most excited about is that Pete is here for one season.
Yeah.
And that the path to a brighter future has taken another step in the right direction for the Mets. You mentioned it before. Vladimir Guerrero Jr. spoke today. He, in fact, did not. Now, we had this conversation, was it a month ago? Whenever it was a long time ago, trying to do the math about whether or not Guerrero Jr. would be available. And the number one thing was that, and by the way, we base it off of the fact that there was a report that the Mets had inquired about Vlad Guerrero Jr. So that is step one, the fact that they were interested. Step two was, well, the Blue Jays are trying to sign him, so who knows if he's going to be available. Okay, but Vlad had the deadline of the first day that the team needed to report to spring training that if he didn't have his extension, he was going to test free agency. Well, today is that day. And Vladimir Guerrero Jr. does not plan to negotiate a potential contract extension in season, paving the way for him to be a free agent, which to me now brings the option of, because of the way that the Pete contract went, the Mets are still obviously very much in play for Vladimir Guerrero Jr. He's going to hit free agency, which means that Toronto would probably be smart to maybe move him before then. And maybe that can be an addition here. If it's not in season, BT, it'll be in the offseason.
Yep.
But I still firmly believe, like I did a month ago, that Vladimir Guerrero Jr. is going to be the Mets' first baseman.
You've been saying it for a while. You could be right. I actually think this lines up perfect for the Mets here. And for some of the reasons that you just laid out. But I'm going to give you a little bit of my own slant. Number one, Pete knows he's got to perform. If he performs, the Mets benefit. Number two, if he doesn't perform, Pete's gone. Or at least after next year, which is $24 million, which is fairly cheap.
Yeah, you have him for DH. Marte's not going to be here. Right-handed DH. Yep. Perfect.
Yeah, you lose some other. I believe McNeil's contract would be done at that point. You start to shed some other money. So, you've got a motivated, focused Pete with Soto on base 42, 43% of the time every night in front of him, number one. I think Pete's going to play very well. If he doesn't, that resolves itself. And, by the way, somebody who you and I both we know is clearly better than Pete, not only seems to want to leave Toronto, but there seems to be some tea leaves saying that he wants Queens, like Soto did. So I just think that this is a good situation. I guess the question is, and you don't know the answer now, do you kick the tires hard now if you're the Mets? Do you go with a package today? Do you try to enter the 2025 season with Vlad, with Pete, with Soto, with Lindor, with Nimmo, with the guys you have? Or do you just kind of wait and see and maybe try to get some leverage there? Toronto's not playing well. Right. Vlad's not happy. Maybe the package is lessened. How do you handle it today?
I think it's a great question. Now, the Mets have obviously more pressing needs, right? Starting rotation. So if you are going to, let's say Dylan Cease is available and the Mets want to use their prospect haul or whatever they had, their assets to go get a pitcher, that's one way to do it. You probably prefer to do that than add another bat in the lineup. However, if Toronto now, every day that goes on, and this is what we were saying a month ago, Toronto was losing leverage. And now they have no leverage. He's on record saying, I'm hitting the open market. He's not saying I'm not coming back to Toronto. Mm-hmm. He said, quote, they're going to have to beat the other 29 teams. Good luck to the Blue Jays doing that. And even then, and look, they have the money, but even then, you just get the sense that
he's done.
Yeah, they weren't even close. So the Blue Jays don't have any leverage. So what exactly is going to be the draw? And then the other part of the equation is what team is going to give the Blue Jays what they want, knowing that Vlad Guerrero Jr. is going to test free agency. They just saw what happened with Soto and the Yankees.
Yep.
Is another team outside of Steve Cohen's Mets going to be willing to do that? And by the way, I don't even know if the Mets would be willing to do that. I think they would because they were inquiring. Now, even more so, with the price probably coming down as far as the prospects or the package back, I wouldn't say go do it right now, But if it's there at the right price, you do it and you figure out the pitching the rest, another way.
Piece it together as the season goes on. I think, listen, when you look at all the teams in baseball, I think you rule out 90-something% that would be willing to do that now, because with no assurances that he's going to resign.
Right.
And this is the shadow of Steve Cohen that he's now cast throughout baseball, where you start to calculate. This is just the reality of it, guys. I think I don't know to what extent, I don't know, but there's got to be an element of awareness that never existed, at least pertaining to the Mets. Maybe back in the day with the Yankees. Well, what are the Yankees going to give Giambi in the offseason?
Yeah.
Now it's kind of like, well, what are the Mets going to, how hard are the Mets going to go after Soto? How hard are the Mets going to go after Vlad Guerrero? And to that point, if you're the Pirates or the Reds or the Brewers or the A's or whomever, the Tigers, I don't know, and the White Sox, teams that might have better farm systems, that's clearly subjective.
Yeah.
But why would you give up, 3 or 4 top 10 prospects when he's coming, he's leaving?
Yeah, and when you know the Mets are going to want him, not only because of the rumor that they already inquired for him, but also because, just do the math, his age, obviously the tie-in potentially with Soto. Like the Mets, the number one thing Steve Cohen has shown the propensity to go out there and invest in, even if he failed, was the younger star player, right? Yamamoto, that's why they went so hard after him, because he was a younger, high-end pitcher. Soto, he's not gonna break the bank for everybody. Soto, you do it. Guerrero fits that mold. He's not exactly Soto, but he's gonna get a lot. He's gonna be 26 this year.
Yep.
Which means, all right, by the time you get him 27, but still you got, 27 years old.
Yeah, you got 5-6 years where he's going to hit 300.
And here's what I love about Vlad. More consistent than most performers, right? Like a star performer, you want consistency, and that's why Alonso, high ups and then some downs.
Yeah.
Consistent power for the most part.
For sure.
But Vlad is pretty consistent where you're going to get 25 home runs minimum, and that's probably low. You're going to get 100 ribbies every year, 111, 97, 94, 103. Those are the last 4 seasons for him. The batting average, all right, there's been a little inconsistency there, 311, 274, 264, 323. So that has fluctuated, but still, worst case has been 264, which, come on.
His best case for Pete.
Yeah,
basically.
right. That's exactly right. For 27-year-old, I think, like you said, BT, just all the things are lining up. The contract for Pete, the age of Vlad now being going to hit free agency, Toronto not being a team that's really, I don't know what they're going to try to do this year now.
I don't know what their plan is.
Yeah.
The other thing that Vlad brings that Pete just doesn't, and this is just a feel thing. He's I don't know. Pete's coming up, and again, I do think Pete's going to have a good season. I really do. But Pete's coming up. Maybe we can nibble on the corners, sliders. Bust him off the plate, go low and away, get him out. He can almost get himself out sometimes. I think you see Vlad Guerrero in the on-deck circle, whether he's wearing a Toronto uniform, a Mets uniform, or a Yankees or a Red Sox uniform. He terrifies you.
Come on, dude. He's just a bet.
It's a level of fear that Pete will never have.
So now here was the question that I wanted to bring up, right? We get down to it. Pete spoke yesterday, and I'm with you. I'm not going to say he's going to have a big year. I can't do that because I thought he was last year. I feel good about what I saw from Alonso, and I'm really rooting for him. Like you said, the Mets benefit if he goes nuts. They hope he does hit 50 home runs, have a monster season. Let them decide what to do with it. What do you think the Met fan feels, Pete versus Vlad? Do you think the majority of the people realize that Vlad is the better player / far better investment, or would they prefer that Pete is signed for the next 5-6 years?
I think they're emotionally conflicted, but I think their baseball sensibilities give them the only answer, and that's the guy who's playing north of the United States right now.
I disagree, actually.
Really?
I think the majority of fans,
Go ahead.
Wrongly so, would prefer their guy.
Well, that's why I say emotionally.
Yeah.
Meaning you think that Met fans think that Pete's better, or that they want him more? Those are two very different things.
No, it's the same. I think that they want Pete more. It should be the same thing. Like, you would want the one
you
who
would
you
want the
think
better
is
player. Yeah.
But I believe that most Met fans want Alonso back long term because he's their guy, and they believe that Pete's going to find his form again or whatever. By the way,
All right, let's think about this. And by the way, these are good problems to have.
Yeah.
These are good problems to have. These are problems that generally don't present themselves to the Mets. Now it's suddenly, rather than how can we get an elite player, now it's like, well, we're juggling an abundance of options, and we'll see where this goes. That's why when the Mets got Soto the next day, after you went bonkers with the Cohen stuff, which was hysterical, I just sat there and I said, think things change, man. And Yankee fans, at least for now, Yankee fans have to acknowledge that the game is different. And now the Mets are at a seat at the table that they've never been at. But complicating this evaluation of Pete versus Vlad, let's push how many home runs is he away from, Darryl? What's the number again, Hoff?
27.
Thank you. Look at Hoff.
26, 27 to win.
27 to eclipse him. Right. Got it. So once he bangs home run number 27 this year, which he will, and hopefully it's at home, think about when he's jogging around those bases, probably be a good crowd. Mets will be good this year. A lot of juice over in Queens. That conflict is going to be weighed down. Again, that's why I say their baseball sensibility tells them there's no doubt Vlad's better. But these little moments add up. Hitting the home run against Devin Williams, hitting a home run to pass Darryl Strawberry, having a big season that I think that he will. So, again, if you strip away the emotion, which is hard to do as a fan, it's Vladdy. But I think it's going to be a little tougher than you. Like that, the number's going to be a little more distorted than you think. They love the guy, man.
It becomes even more difficult if Pete has, to your point, a monster season this year. BT Sal and the Fan, our friends at Town Fair Tire, remind you that at Town Fair Tire, you always get the guaranteed lowest price on name brand tires from Connecticut to Maine. Nobody beats Town Fair Tire. Nobody. Anthony's in Manalapan. What's up, Ant?
Hey, how's it going, guys?
Good.
I just want to talk about defense a little bit. I know Vlad Guerrero. He's just like Soto. I mean, amazing offensive player, but his defense is severely below average. I mean, if you put him on the Mets, I mean, his defense is below Pete Alonso's. I mean, you put him on the Mets, that right side with Juan Soto and Vlad is, it's poor. And then another thing is you're clogging up that DH spot because these are young guys that are already below average defenders. With time, they're going to have to find a spot for them, and you're going to be over $1 billion on two guys that you're trying to find a spot to put them.
Yeah, I wouldn't worry about that. Thank you for the call, Anthony. First of all, he's 26 years old, be 27 next year. You can't be worse than Pete Alonso defensively. Like, he might not be as good at picking the ball. I don't think he's worse throwing the baseball.
Much better arm. He's got a good, because he can play third. He's got a good arm.
That's what I'm saying. I think Alonso has done a great job working his rear end off to become a serviceable defensive first baseman. Remember, they didn't think he was going to be able to play in the big leagues. That's how bad he was.
Smith, remember, wasn't that? They were like early.
Dom Smith was a much better fielder.
Better fielder.
And Alonso was thought to be like unplayable at first base at the big league level. He's worked his rear end off to be a serviceable defensive player. I don't think there's going to be a significant drop-off in defense from Alonso to Vlad. Now, I admit, I'm not watching Vlad play defense every single game, and you only really learn. You can look at some of the defensive metrics, sure.
And I've got him for you, but it's not really. He's got an 80 percentile in the arm.
You have it in comparison to Alonso or no?
Pete's arm strength was like 20 percentile, and Vlad's right around 80. He's got a rocket compared to Pete. I think he's quick twitch. I think he's a little faster, but I think Pete's better scooper.
But you're not paying Vladimir Guerrero Jr. to play defense.
Exactly.
You get a significant upgrade offensively. And also, I don't know how many years he's going to get. How many years do you think off the top? He's not getting
I think he's getting 10.
Okay. I mean, that's a lot.
I do. I think he's getting 10.
Now, that might be, 10 for what? We're talking
5?
Yeah.
What did he turn down? 4? 380?
I'm not sure, but I don't think it was close to that.
Hoff, did you, what do you think? Was he around the neighborhood of 380? What was that number? Do you remember?
Vlad?
Yeah, see if you can find out what Vlad turned down from Toronto. I thought it was 3-something.
So did I. I thought it was just short of 4.
Right, so he might not. Yeah, now remember, it's going to be the market. It's not just the Mets going, we want you.
Correct.
It's whatever the market is, and then Cohen going over a little bit higher than whatever the market is.
Yep.
So, I mean, is it going to say 550? I don't think Vlad, this is a different animal to me than Soto. I think he might get, he's going to get between 4 and 5, I think. Now, this is way early to be discussing this. Who the hell knows, really? We'll find out. But let's say 450, something like that. And if is it 10 years? All right, but
45 a year.
You're not getting 15 years.
No,
the way that you got with
no way.
Soto.
I'm with you on
There's
that.
not going to be that demand. Either way, it's going to be a big contract.
Yeah.
But I still think it's worth it because you're paying a guy who's going to be 27 years old. This year's going to be 26. So obviously, when he hits free agency, he'll be 27.
Well, Pete got 30 this year, okay, and Vlad's better.
Okay.
I mean, so you just start 35, 37, 38, 40 right
40.
there. You
so
start
40
right there
for 10 years.
It's 400.
So that's why I say 425. I think you're probably talking under 450.
What if he hits 320 this year?
Yeah.
I mean, he's done that, before. It's not like he never
27.
does it. What if he hits 320 with 36
remember,
doubles and 34 home runs and 126 RBI?
Yeah,
I mean,
I get it. The market, though, for first baseman, and again, a young superstar.
but the Red Sox will be in. I think the Yanks will be in. I know the Mets will be in. Right now it's Toronto.
Right.
And Toronto was right around 4-ish. I think that thing's going to touch 5.
Mets and Yanks both could be driving that price up again. Who knows?